right. Okay. Thank you all
Awesome.
for tuning in and for listening to the Real Short Box here and watching us live on YouTube Live. We really appreciate that. My name is Donald. Of course, we all have name tags again today. So right below me is Jarrett and Kevin. And then over in this corner is Darren. And then we have an esteemed guest today. We have professional model maker. Particularly, he's been working recently on The Mandalorian, Mr. Josh Spooner. So, Josh, thank you for tuning in and being on the show.
Hello.
Yay!
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to kind of post on our social medias and stuff and let people know that we're there and we're live. In the meantime, though, I'm going to leave it to these guys to talk a little bit with you about some things that they love very deeply, and I think that's Star Wars related stuff. So take it away, gentlemen.
All right, Josh.
Well,
Oh, sorry, Kevin. Go right ahead. Please start.
no, I was gonna say, in the background, I see Josh has a Star Wars poster, A New Hope. Which one's your favorite of the original trilogy?
I've had this conversation for so many years. Every time my gut is Empire, but you kind of need to go with the classic. You need to start somewhere, and I think there's aspects to New Hope that almost feel like, a documentary or an art film, like a student film, and there's no other episode like it, and there's no other. Maybe now as we get into the new projects, new trilogies, you'll see more diversity in the style of Star Wars movies. But honestly, I think the first one might be my favorite.
Interesting. You don't hear that very often. It's almost always the second one. Second one. Almost always.
But I was going to go to get Tachi to get the power converters.
So, Josh, of course, I've asked these guys everything, or this question. Now, of course, you must answer it. What was that? Do you remember the first time you ever saw anything in the Star Wars universe on TV or in the theater?
Yeah, I was. So my grandparents used to own a kind of like a little cabin up north in Ontario, like 7 hours away. So it'd be this long journey just to get up there, and it felt like this whole different world. Big rocks and pine trees and all that stuff. And, most of the stuff was outdoors related. There wasn't a lot of TV watching. So when you would watch a movie, it would be at night when everybody was kind of like at a party or kind of like, and if they were having a party, it would be kind of like, how do we send the kids out of our hair over there to get distracted? And I remember being really little, and one of the guys at the party, his name was Doug. He's asking all the kids, all right, what do you guys want to watch? And he's rustling through the VHSs, and he's like, we got blah, 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 Return of the Jedi, blah, 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 blah. And everybody's like, yeah, Return of the Jedi. And that phrase, I didn't understand. I didn't know what a Jedi was. I don't think I'd probably seen Darth Vader maybe on television. I don't, honestly, I couldn't tell you how old I was, maybe 5, maybe a little younger, a little older, I'm not sure, but around then, enough to form memories. And I remember watching Return of the Jedi, and I think, for a little kid, before the prequels came out, that was probably one of the best ways to get introduced to Star Wars, seeing all Jabba and all the creatures and stuff. Mm-hmm. The kids that were a little older when that movie came out were a little jaded, I think, and they thought it was kind of silly. But for a little kid, I think it was a perfect way to get introduced to the exotic nature of Star Wars versus other sci-fi franchises.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. I've posted really quick. I've posted on the social media on Facebook and stuff. So go ahead and grab that and post away and send to all your friends and stuff.
I have already. Would you say that was an influence, or what would you say?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because there's creatures in all of them, of course. But I think, are you asking me if just that first experience was an influence? Yeah. That whole time in my life is, that time when the world hasn't really influenced who we are yet, and everything seems magical. And that was like, besides Labyrinth, I can't think of anything in Dark Crystal that's more like puppet driven at that time, and I think that was kind of all blurred together for me too. Is like I thought and they did work together, you know. But the whole like entertainment pop culture universe at that time was dominated by Jim Henson, George Lucas, and Spielberg, and it's like it was all just kind of one big thing for me. And absolutely, that shapes everything I think I do. You know, not that precise moment, but that definitely.
Josh, real quick.
Too far off. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, just on a personal note, that I'm a very big Star Wars fan. I don't know if you notice, I'm a very big Star Wars fan here. So you're gonna have a really hard time stumping me on anything, and in fact, I might get you on a few things. You know, so we're gonna, you know, do a little bit of that. It's gonna get crazy in here.
It almost looks like you're wearing a Star Trek original series uniform right now.
I think he is.
What?
Is he? I
It
didn't
looks
notice
like
the
he
icon.
Is that?
It's more of a.
It-
is it?
Oh, I thought it was like an XFL
yeah.
jersey.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally missed that.
Now,
Awesome.
now, Josh, from what I understand in our conversation over the phone, you really are a big Star Trek fan as well.
Oh yes. I'm not gonna. I love all fantasy. I love all storytelling. But I'm not gonna lie. I'm probably a little bit more of a Star Trek fan than I am Star Wars. But it's just
How
been
did you
with me
even get on
longer.
this show, Donald? You're corrupting
He needs
people.
to go. I mean,
Welcome to the dark side, Josh.
We can edit that out, right, Donald? And
No,
your shirt,
look.
we blur that out.
Yeah, it's
You
live,
could be a
buddy.
Star Wars and Star
Live.
Trek fan. I'm both a Star Trek and Star Wars fan. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to choose between the two.
Yeah, you can be
no,
both.
I think of them as like parents. It's like you got your rational, logical father, maybe that's a little bit older, and you got. I don't know where I'm going with this, but like
Well,
your
plus-
mom, she's more
well,
fun
plus-
and like more
Plus,
about emotion.
Star Trek is more science fiction. I would say Star Wars is more science fantasy.
Absolutely.
No, I was going to say you could be a Star Wars fan or you could be a Beastmaster fan. I mean, there's really no. You're either one or the other. It's just kind of, yeah.
Can't take them.
That's
one
what-
without the other.
That's what you get. Yeah. Beastmaster. Wow. I tried watching that not too long ago. It was on. It's on Amazon Prime, by the way, for free if anybody wants to watch it. Yeah, it's aged.
Look, now I'm just going to say right now, Mark Singer and Tanya Roberts, may she rest in peace. Now, this is perfect stuff. I mean, the guy's name is Dar. How could you go wrong with that, bro?
Okay, so guys, real quick, my mom's on here, so everybody say hello to my mother.
I miss.
I miss me, Kitty.
Aloha.
Hi, Mom. And Bonnie's here too. She just popped in to say that she's here. So thanks for joining us, Bonnie. And they're starting to come in slowly but surely. So please feel free, anybody that's already in the chats, as we continue to talk, please feel free to ask whatever questions you want to ask, and I'll get those across to all of us here that we can get them answered.
Yeah, we have a professional model maker here, Josh Spooner, who actually created models for The Mandalorian. And once we do our official intros, we will have him get into all that. But right now, we're just warming everybody up with just some generic kind of Star Wars talk, fantasy. You know, this is going to be mainly all, of course, Star Wars related. But since we are, since you did work on Mandalorian, Josh, I have to know, because I suspect you may have a little inside information. Which spin-off do you think we should really look forward to?
Good question.
And Jon Favreau is watching, so just.
Well, I didn't
And
know.
Dave Filoni.
I didn't know about Book of Boba Fett until just a few. Oh, I don't know if I can say that. Is everybody?
Everyone
with
knows.
like premiere dates. It's all over the place. Where what people know now. There's no water cooler.
Right.
Before I knew about Book of Boba Fett, I was really looking forward to the Obi-Wan show, based on I don't know who made it. It was either Hot Toys or one of these nice collectibles. It's a 6th scale statue of Obi-Wan, and he's like, you can. It comes with 2 different heads. One of them is Ewan McGregor, and one of them is Alec Guinness. You guys know this statue? It's a beautiful, giant statue, and it's kind of like Obi-Wan in between Episode 3 and New Hope, wandering the desert. It's kind of like he's got a backpack with a miniature moisture evaporator kind of strapped to it so he can trek through the desert. And then he's got a shoulder pad from the Clone Wars. It's kind of this little like the statue itself tells a story. So just based on that statue, I was like, I want to see that show. And I think we've been thinking about that forever. I think after seeing examples like Rogue One and Solo, it's like some people are like, we don't need to know that. I think there's always interesting stuff. Just seeing a crate dragon for the first time in season 2 of Mandalorian, it's like he could just need to go get some gas or something or some water somewhere and run into one of those. That's the whole adventure, It's like, I think just thinking of it more as like the animated shows, but live action, now that they can do that stuff with this volume, is just like, there's so much fun and so much stuff to be mined,
Yeah. It's a bit mind-blowing where we were when I look back at like my favorite shows of the 90s and stuff, and where we're at now, and just the elevation. Like, some of these shows right now could be in movie theaters easily, like, and we would be amazed. And it's just we're spoiled, in other words, I think.
Oh, nerds are spoiled like insanely, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought we would have got a show like Cobra Kai, like something like that? Like, I'm just looking at that. Like, if you told little kid me, I'd be like,
talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
Exactly.
By the way, Josh, my mom says you're awesome. I think she's seen some of your pictures on our social media, and she thinks they're very cool.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
The Midwest love appreciation. Look at that.
Yeah, no, I seriously can't wait till we really start digging into these models. I think one of the first times I was really introduced to miniatures consciously, we're called the Real Short Box, Josh. We're big comic book people. The original Batman, Anton Furst, who did all of the miniatures, that's like mind-blowing stuff to me in so many ways. Like, and when you watch a movie like that, can you like kind of be like, oh, I know how they did that. I know how they did that. Does that ever like pop into your head?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. Watching all those behind the scenes things back in the day started to give you a taste for it. But like once you start making the stuff and casting things from resin and carving things out of foam, you start to become much more like analytical. And I don't think that like diminishes anything. If anything, you appreciate the towering accomplishments way more. You're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I definitely look at things from a very filmmaker oriented perspective now more than ever, but I don't think that makes anything change. I think it's just, I appreciate it in a different way.
Good is still good. Bad is still bad, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then you could still find something in the bad stuff and be like, oh, well, at least that looked kind of cool.
It's true.
A lot of great miniature works in mediocre sci-fi films in the 90s. Looking at you, Event Horizon. And
damn, fucking Event Horizon slam right there. Damn.
Also, somebody asked me years ago, a good friend of mine, asked me what are some of my favorite spaceship designs from like any movies, not necessarily Star Wars or Star Trek. And I go, I really love the miniature work in Alien Resurrection. Kind of not the best Alien film, but I thought the spaceships in that movie were awesome. The Betty is a really, Gundam-looking, Japanese-looking, Chris Foss-looking spaceship that kind of was. You don't get a lot of that stuff. You do now with CG, but when models were, practical effects, they were kind of like more like a hunk of something. They wouldn't get all spirally and crazy all the time. But
Now I got a question. Now I would think the panel here, we've kind of grown up with models, so like I love them. To me, like I can tell the difference between a full CG than when it's a model with the CGI. I just have always appreciated it more. Was there a time, though, when CGI was kicking up where it looked like models were going to just go the way of the dinosaurs kind of thing? Or,
I mean, honestly, right from the get-go, I've always been a fan of, I mean, there's been some, like Star Trek Insurrection, there's some pretty iffy CG spaceship work. But I was always really impressed by what they were doing, to be honest with you. I grew up in an era where we were just happy to have whatever we got. I just saw the Coca-Cola polar bears commercial in Natural Born Killers last night, and I was like looking at it. I'm like, this looks terrible. But when we saw those Coca-Cola bears when we were little kids, we're like, this is amazing. Like, what is that texture? It was like tasty because you didn't know what it was.
Right.
Now that we have perspective, it's, I've never thought that. I've just been continually impressed with what I'm seeing. I think some like big touch points or touchstone moments were like the reimagining of Battlestar Galactica. I thought the spaceships in that were really well detailed, and like the fights, the space battles were kind of like what you saw in Attack of the Clones with the zooms, and they were starting to do that. Even Lucasfilm was starting to do those like zooms and almost like a handheld, aerial war look. But then when I saw like, say what you will about the rest of the movie, but seeing the Prometheus in the movie Prometheus, I thought the spaceship was really cool with the little lights. Again, reminding me of Event Horizon. Mm-hmm. When you add like detail to things that, like, I don't know, I think you can get really busy and really cool with CG, and I like it all. I think there's lessons to be learned from what's come before, what exists now, and kind of mesh it all together.
So I watched recently, and recently I mean within the last 3 years, because I haven't gone to a movie theater in the last year. So
I go all the time.
That's right. So the New Beverly Cinema out here in LA, they are now owned by Quentin Tarantino. And what Tarantino wanted to do or continue to do was Saturday kid matinees. So you could take your children to watch a film. Well, a lot of these films, I don't have kids. And I love a lot of these films that they're playing. So I'm the weirdo sitting in there alone, like surrounded by a bunch of other people's children and their parents. and I'm not looking for trouble. I just want to smile and watch my show and enjoy it. And I hope that's what everybody thinks when I'm in there. But you just never know. You just feel weird. So I'm sitting in there.
One of my kids. I got 3.
Yeah, well, you had 4, remember?
Oh.
Yeah. So, the Last Starfighter was playing there at the theater, and I was like, holy crap, I have to go see that. And I remember going in and watching that and looking at the meteors, like that they were floating past in space, and it was these big gray squares that were just kind of like so
what is this?
Awful. And I was like, oh my god, this is so bad. Like, holy shit, how did I not? But I still loved it, and I still loved the film, don't get me wrong, but you definitely notice, like, that's like old school 80s CGI versus now, and it's tough.
Like the first movie.
Yeah, and then you look at like something like Inner Space, which I also watched at a kiddie matinee there, like probably a couple weeks later, and they use so many models and then like practical effects and stuff. It still holds up really, really well, and it's like
absolutely
really cool to look at, and it's such a fun, good feeling film that I just like those two. I just love them, and it was just a great kind of like a back-to-back cinema experience like that, to see the difference between, you know, when they're making models and then when they're trying to do CGI and stuff back then. Now it's a little harder to tell sometimes, but back then it was really, you know, now if you watch it, it's very apparent. Very apparent.
Yeah, just a quick remark. We are moments away from going live, but I also wanted to take a moment to let the audience know that Josh has a couple of hand models, I guess you would say models he's made that he will also be showing this evening. So that is exciting for me because, you know, obviously we can see photographs of everything you do and stuff, but hold off. We're going to get the surprise here in a second, but like all that kind of stuff that you're going to do, but you're actually going to be able to show us something up close, which I think is a really unique experience for our audience. Real
quick, Adam has popped in. We've got Batman's here, so that's always nice. Fun, you know, when Batman's here.
I feel safer.
Yeah, Amish is here. Evan has popped up. Hey, Evan, nice to see you. And I think I said Enrique. And so we've got a few people that are in the chats that are popping in to say hello. and listening to the conversation. And Kevin, why don't you go ahead and do the quickest of quick introductions, since kind of everybody, a lot of people have already been introduced, and we don't want to like reiterate. But for those just now tuning in right now, what are we discussing, and who is everybody?
All right, real quick. I'll start with the man from Youngstown, Ohio. He is a man of many talents. He is simply known as Darren. Next, he is the chairman and CEO of the Real Short Box. He is the man who is DC Comics for life. He is simply the original Donald.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
And then last but not least of my co-host, he is a man who represents Napa Valley. He is the food killer of ignorant people everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, sweet white chocolate. He is simply known to you as Jer.
DJ Airhorn. Of
course, let me introduce to you our special guest. He is the master model maker from the great state of Michigan. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Josh Spooner.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on, Josh. We appreciate it very much.
And of course, I am your humble podcaster, the Grand Master of the Jedi and Vulcan Arts, your Supreme Chancellor, Dr. Kevin.
So humble. So humble.
Raphael says, hey guys, and Sammy says hello. So Raphael and Sammy have popped in now. So hello, both of you. Thanks for joining us. Josh, I'm going to tell you right now, Sammy's pretty hardcore, so she's going to come at you. And you got to be ready, man. You got to be ready.
Bring the fire.
Crazy. She's hardcore. Julio just popped in as well, everybody. So, hey, Julio. Julio. Josh, if you don't know, Julio was our guest last week. He's very well versed in all things Star Wars. So he was able to hold his own with everybody here, and even show us a few moves, so to speak.
Yep. And 40 years.
Yeah, Sammy. Okay, I will shut up now. I forgot Batman 20. Gabe. That is Gabe. I'm sorry, Gabe. I forget people's aliases. Batman obviously has an alias, so I just assumed you were Bruce Wayne, but I guess you're Gabe. So there we go.
Gabe Wayne.
I'm actually helping one of our listeners here. I'm not trying to be ignoring. I'm helping one of our listeners here try to participate in the chat a little bit. So that's why I'm looking down at the moment.
Okay, that's fine. We won't think you're rude at all. I mean, there's plenty of us to ask questions and talk. I can go on for hours. Really, I can't.
Let me jump in here first. Josh,
sure.
Let's see. Tell us a little bit about maybe your upbringing and what led you into the world of model making.
Okay. Well, I'm from, like you said before, Michigan, and raised in the Midwest. There is a abundance of rusty buildings and suburban sprawls, and I went to a pretty well run school system where we had things like computers, and I would imagine it's not like a lot of kids don't have all these opportunities. They don't have art programs. They don't have music in some places. And I feel very lucky to have been. It's like Detroit is, gets a bad rap, and but there's parts of it that are, well run and well financed and stuff like that. And I just feel very fortunate to have grown up in those circumstances, where art school or not necessarily art school, but art classes were provided. We had music education. So growing up in that area, it was like not necessarily possible to be an artist full time. It was not impossible. You saw it. You saw design being applied in architecture. You saw it being designed in car design, transportation design. But it seemed like a very practical place to grow up. A very 9 to 5 kind of place. And I feel like this is more of an opinion than a story about how I grew up. But it's like, art school seemed like a different world where I came from, but I always gravitated towards it, and I kept it in my life no matter what. Seeing other people from the area go on to do greater things, like Doug Chang, the production designer for Mando and Episode 1, and not production designer, but art director, illustrator. He's from Westland, Michigan, and I remember my grandma, when I was a little kid, she gave me like a local newsletter from like the Westland City Council or something like that. And it's like it was right around the time Episode 1 came out, and they're like, local guy makes it in the big time, and I'm like, and then it mentions this art school, CCS, which is College for Creative Studies down in Detroit, and said he went there before he went on to Art Center out in Pasadena here. But that was like this, like, oh, you can do this, and like, I mean, it's a 1 in a million shot, but I figured at least if I was kind of doing the right things, that maybe it would lead to something. I never thought we'd be talking about a show in Star Wars, but as long as I was working, because it wasn't even necessarily movies that I would be doing. I just wanted to do art in some way. Luckily, the film business involves so many aspects of art that I can find a way to survive in it.
Josh, I had a quick question for you. Just jumping in maybe to one of your photographs that you sent over to us. It's kind of like an indoor structure where Gina Carano and Mando are actually in a fight, and she's strangling the guy. So something that we talked about, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is not my level of expertise. I understand that you built only a section of that, and was CGI then used to expand upon what you built? And how does that exactly kind of work?
Yeah, for that, the hut on Sorgan specifically, the shape was, given to us as a circle, and in order to save time and just make it easier to photograph and scan, the model was built just like 1/3 of the circle was constructed. And because, when you're framing something up, rarely do you see, except for some wide shots, rarely do you see the whole darn thing. So it's like, it was cost effective. It was just literally, going back to that word, the practical thing to do was just build a section of it and clone it 3 times around. And just because we built a model practically, that wasn't the end all be all. They would just kind of like use pieces of it and clone it and adjust it any way they wanted to. It was really just kind of like a starting. You see that a lot with creature stuff, where they make like a bust. I think they did it for Rampage. They made a bust for the gorilla in Rampage and scanned it, and then you can play with it any way you want.
His name is George, Josh.
Thank you. I couldn't remember.
So basically, what I have on the screen is what you were talking about, the round kind of very large set piece that you were talking about, just having worked on building. That's in, I think what we have is another photo here, which is a particular scene where Mando is in front of it, and it's kind of the light peeking through in the background, and it's kind of thatched, and it looks it's very rustic looking. It's really cool, the effect that it's able to give in that. So that looks really like that's something really special. So that's definitely like, dude, my hat's off to you, man. This looks great. Like, this is something that this is a piece of art. You know what I mean? Like, it's beautiful. I really like it.
Absolutely. I have to give a shout out to the whole team led by Dave Asling of Creation Consultants. He brought, he knew how to tie knots from like ship tying knots and like all these little things. You know, he knew things like this that I didn't know, and it was a whole group of us. I was just part of the team, and it was a pleasure to work on. You know, and another thing about Mando specifically, think of how much of a pain in the butt that would be to get all the reflections in the armor if it was a green screen. You know, that's what this whole show seems based around. Like we can now make highly reflective surfaces reflect the proper environment. It just seems like everything is catered to the volume and it all works together.
Okay. Real quick, we have a question that just popped up. It's from Rafael Juarez. Rafael asks, what happens to most of these sets when they're done, when they're done being shot, when they're out of use? What happens to those?
I'm not sure what's done with the miniature itself. I'm assuming maybe goes in a vault somewhere. I don't know. But as far as I know, a lot of the set dressing that augments the screen, the stuff that goes in the foreground in front of it, gets reused in a lot of ways. I feel like I've seen things going back to Force Awakens being reused to this day. Yeah, I think as a production is always conscious of the bottom line, reusing things as much as possible, slapping a new coat of paint on top of it to make it look different, gluing some model parts to it. You know, whatever you have to do to change it. I think most of these things just keep getting recycled.
So it's like old school Walt Disney, where they would use some of the same like scenes of animation when they just paint over it. That's great.
Exactly.
Or and this is a real spoiler for some of you out there. One of the ways that you can get fired at the Universal Studios Hollywood theme park is by scratching away the Simpsons paint, because they did not strip the Back to the Future paint. They just painted over it. Okay. And I just want you to know that vehicle does the exact same moves as Back to the Future with its laser disc. Instead, now it's the Simpsons with a DVD.
Wow. It's a
cost
DVD.
Effective, right?
I guess. Yeah. And you know what? It's a lot of fun. I've been on it multiple times. It's always a good time to go on that ride.
I remember watching the Waterworld live show and then being like, hey, I remember coming here as a kid when this was the Miami Vice live show, and they're doing the same stuff.
What? Wait, did you see the Conan show? Was that Universal?
Yes. Oh my God, you just gave me a flashback. Yeah, I did see that one. It knocked the people into the fire and stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Brought to you by Universal Studios. One day will be reopened.
Sammy states that this show has brought so much to the Star Wars universe and to filming technology. So I think that's her way of saying she's in love with the show, in other words.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You said something a while back ago about 90s shows, and I wanted to say that this is, I don't know, maybe Clone Wars gave me that feeling too, but this show, Mandalorian, feels like an old late 80s, 90s show when like Young Indiana Jones Chronicles was coming out, and Henson had Jim Henson Hour. It just seems like this kind of storyteller. I don't know if you remember that show.
Oh, yeah.
It seems kind of like it fits right in there. Like, what year is this? 1990? You know, and it's like you didn't have that much of a break in between the original trilogy and now. It's like, I don't know.
Josh, my favorite storyteller episode was the one with the little devils and the bet that they made.
Yes.
Wow, that's so cool. I love that episode so much. It creeped me out so much as a kid, but as an adult, it's like my favorite. I still, like, when the DVD came out of that, I had to own it. Like, it was, like, I was like, this is how much? It's like $29. I was like, I don't care, just give it to me. You know?
My childhood back.
Right. Yeah, I want my childhood back, damn it. We've got some more here. Comic Meyer says that he thinks that the sets are going to head right to Burning Man. Which, I guess based on what we have here, that shot with the thatched background and stuff, that would make sense.
Perfect.
Yeah.
The Wicker Man.
Yeah, it could also be that, yeah. Raptor Bacon, which is Adam, he says, I got hired at Universal for the Terminator ride, but moved back to Ohio, LOL. So,
I missed the Terminator ride.
It wasn't. Was it a ride, or Adam? I thought it was like just a show
with like effects. Like
yeah. Yeah, and who were you going to be, Adam? That's what I'm curious about. Who were you going to be? Sammy says the Waterworld show is the best.
You mean Miami Vice, but yeah, it's good.
Julio says the Conan show was awesome. Let's see.
Which show was awesome?
Sorry?
Raphael says you're always welcome to bring any of the miniatures to be displayed at the greatest comic shop. We can be heroes in Chatsworth,
there we go.
We,
There we go.
we speak highly of them. So Josh, I of course have another question for you. I think this is something that, I don't feel like I'm alone in having this interest. It's very obvious that you have very highly skilled people that create miniatures and sets, have gone through some form of training, clearly have natural artistic ability. Do you feel like this is something that maybe a gifted artist can just pick up right away? Or are there specific skill sets you really should kind of master before you get into something like miniature building?
For somebody who's watching that is interested in getting into it, I would say be practicing all the time, whether it be, building model kits, if that's a way to start that's easy for you. Things, building things from coffee stirs, just familiarizing yourself with, a long day of fine work and getting your eyes focused on something and getting in the zone. I think for somebody that already has an inclination to paint or draw would have no problem with this. I would recommend learning as much as you can about casting, molding and casting, mass production kind of techniques, study. I don't know if this is a great recommendation, but study, Henry Ford, study the assembly line. Think about applying those skills, not just being an artist alone in the studio, but being part of a team, being it's all relevant. Team sports, team activities, all these things can be influential. I did so many jobs that had nothing to do with model making, and I find those things influence me and help me in this job. And, just think of it. There's still stuff where you got to rip a pallet apart or put a pallet together and load up a truck. There's many things that have nothing to do with being an artist. And a lot of these companies, there aren't there's not a whole team for just the loading of the thing. You got to do that too. So all I'm saying is don't discount any experience you've picked up in your past, and learn as much as you can about 3D printing. There's so many avenues you can go to now, videos you can watch, just materials. I feel like I'm going on and on.
Hey Josh, so the basic premise of what you're saying is that you should get on set somewhere, use the materials to make yourself a Model T car, and drive off, right?
Okay. Drive down the road. Why not?
Yeah, that's what I figured. Has anybody tried to 3D model print a car yet? Has anybody
Oh, I'm sure.
I thought someone has done that already.
I know they did with a pizza. Something with a pizza. I don't know if they died from eating it, but somebody model printed a pizza or something.
Jared, I'm pretty sure you have a 3D modeled gun.
Yeah, I do. Let me see if I can show it off better with a bit different background. But, whoops, hang on. There I am. Hold on. Choose background. All right. Yeah, somebody made this care of Instagram. Somebody made me a Mandalorian blaster, 3D printed.
Oh,
yeah,
quite nice. Really cool.
What's the material, Jared?
It feels it's almost like a wood, but it's a plastic. It's definitely a plastic, I think.
Okay.
It's almost like those old rubber band guns you would get back in the day, kind of thing, but cooler looking.
That is pretty cool. Sammy wants a 3D printed Stormtrooper head, and Amish says that someone made a life-size ice Corvette. A Corvette made out of ice. So I guess ice sculpting could fit in there too somewhere, right?
Finally. Ice sculptors are getting their due.
Finally. Finally, the last ice sculpture I remember is the penis one from that movie, and they put like the Bailey's cream down it, and it went down, and everybody had to like, yeah.
I didn't see this film, Donald. I don't know what's
Really?
going
Yeah,
on.
what's this?
I forgot
Jared-
this movie.
Jared, it was your bachelor party, so I don't.
Right.
So anyway, I sorry, I'm gonna hog yet another. Oh, here we go.
There's another one. That's the Boba Fett blaster.
Yeah.
You printed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
All I can say is thank you, Etsy. You can find anything. Yeah. Yeah, they did a good job.
Yeah, they did.
Great.
Josh, another question I kind of have for you. So I did see some of the photos that you sent over to us. So from what I gather, you were able to see the wonderful Grogu up close. I'm curious right now. So just how tight is the security on that set when it comes to preventing spoilers from leaking out?
We were given. I have no experience being on the set, so I can't tell you much. But I mean, with that robbery that happened in the first season, I don't know how tight it was. But
For those that don't know, what robbery?
Yeah, I didn't know
for
about
those
this.
who don't know, I believe some camera equipment or some hard drives were stolen during the first season when they were shooting down in around the marina. Maybe it was Manhattan Beach. I don't know where they were shooting, but there was an incident involving obviously somebody who either just walked in off the street or was involved in the production. I don't want to speculate. But I think they probably got a lot more serious around this for the second season. But to answer your question specifically with what we were doing, there was a whole procedure. I don't want to get into any details, but there was a whole procedure involving a third-party security company and
Waterboarding.
Yeah, and the company I was working for, we dealt very little in things like digital assets. It wasn't like we were doing CG, so it was a lot less. Just we weren't allowed to take photos. We had a staff, a person on the staff who was taking photos, and we could take them, but we couldn't do anything with them at the time. That's all, and it was like an in-house camera.
How much information are you getting when they're like, okay, you're doing this episode. This is what we're like. How much are they giving you around what's going on with the prop you're making?
Nothing.
Really?
Yeah. No, just some orthographic drawings. And I was telling Darren when we were talking the other day, I thought the Sorgan hut was going to be something for Kashyyyk or Endor,
right?
Based on those old. I love the old Art of Return of the Jedi book by various artists, but the Ralph McQuarrie painting of the giant creature that's kind of coming up on the Ewok village. It looked very Kashyyyk to me, and I thought this was the Boba Fett show at this point. Still, I didn't know what this was. Yeah, it was still called. We knew it under the code name, and it's Huckleberry, and that's all we knew. It's and I remember reading an article with Werner Herzog in some other about some other project, and he says, "I'm working on this thing called Huckleberry right now." I'm like, Werner Herzog. Huckleberry? What? No, that's all.
Huckleberry Hound. You were like,
that's how you figure it out, just like you guys would. All we had were some kind of like reference photos of cracked Earth and things like that for like the things we worked on. There'd be art department reference photos, nothing, not even concept art, like real world nature photography and things like that.
Wow.
By the way, Josh, and you can try as hard as you want, audience. I'm not going to crack. After we are done recording here, Josh, I will gladly share with you the new code name of the Mandalorian.
Oh, okay.
I have inside information on this one.
It's Booberry. It's Booberry.
Oh, man, if it was. That makes me so hungry. I love Blueberry cereal. It's like the best. Julio says he would have stolen Beskar. Or Beskar, I guess is the correct pronunciation. Tammy says Grogu will be back. No, she's pipe dreaming. Grogu's gone.
Don't
No.
say that. Don't say
She's
that.
narrowed her eyes at me. Okay, Sammy. Evan says they've 3D printed everything. Not everything, Evan. You just have to think hard on what they haven't done.
Airplane.
Adam has a question. He says, what kind of paint is used on the sets and models?
For full-size sets, I can't say for sure. For the model, we used various paints. Originally, we wanted to do things like varnish the wood, stain the wood, but we found that the kind of like the surface of the wood wouldn't take varnish very well. So I think we just used things like lacquer, and for smaller things like acrylic, the smaller little set pieces around the front there. I don't know if you can see in the photos, but most of it is like just like a lacquer.
Yeah, I've been rotating out like pictures of different things as we go, so they're going to be seeing different various things throughout the whole conversation.
There was kind of in one of the photos that I'm kind of like painting this thing that looks like a barrel. We use things. There's kind of like, so most of the structure's wood, but there's this kind of like cistern thing above the bar that presumably holds all the liquor. I don't know what's up there, but there's these kind of like straps that go around it that have these bolts in it, and those were painted with acrylics. And then Dave had me kind of add this, like, age them with a powder. It was I think they were chalks, and they're like oxide chalks, rust colored chalks. And then that gives that kind of nice dusty texture. It doesn't look like paint. It's not even matte paint can kind of look like paint sometimes. This actually had like a little consistency to it. So that a lot of mixed materials. There's also, just FYI, there's a cloth on the back end of the hut that was dyed with I think they used, I want to say they used tea or something kind of weird. Or maybe they just used tea kettles and dyed it with like RIT dye, but there was some dyed materials in there too, cloth.
So Josh, here's a question. So between myself and Dr. Kevin over here, as we are very big fans of a very particular female character on the show, do you think he or I could potentially bench press more than Gina Carano?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay. Okay. I just I had to ask.
That's a foolish question. She could beat both of us up simultaneously.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a fact, Kevin, or is that a fantasy?
No, I
Could be both.
I'll admit it. It's a fact. We can't fight her. We can't beat her. She'll kill us.
So you would take a rear naked choke from her and smile.
No. I wouldn't want to take anything from her.
What kind of choke, Kevin? Or Darren, what kind of choke?
A rear naked choke,
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I would accept that, but like if it happened,
No, I don't think you want. Donald, I don't think you understand. This is a move that
I heard naked in there.
Donald's taking it.
Yeah, that's the kind of naked that you like. It's the kind of naked that can take your life.
Oh. Oh.
Yes.
Well, when you're going out, I guess you go out in style, right?
Hey man, physical contact is physical contact. In a pandemic, it's limited at this point. So I'm just saying, just look into it. She'll just put you to sleep. She won't kill you.
Depends on her mood that day.
Sammy has a question for Darren. She says, do you know Michelle Williams? She works in post on our show.
Yeah, Michelle Williams.
Which show?
Great. I think it's Grey's Anatomy.
I sure do.
Hey, there you go. You got a connection.
Oh, you're over at Grey's. Oh my gosh, yeah. Say hey to Brad Reese for me as well. Of course, Michelle Williams. There's a couple other names that are escaping me, but yeah, I play softball with them. So yeah, absolutely, I know them.
Look at that inside baseball right there, people.
Yeah.
So, Josh, would it be safe to say that you could make a killer? You could make killer dioramas if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if so, could you make them for me for my action figures, and I will give you specific designs. And
let's talk.
I'm a sad man, but yeah.
So, Josh, can you give me a rough estimate on a full-sized Ewok village? Because I don't think the homes out here are good enough. So I'm just looking at a slice of land.
A 1-to-1 scale Ewok, please.
I don't know what any of that means, but okay, great, let's do it. Just know that I'm 6'1" and I don't want to hit my head on the ceiling. That's all.
Okay. I think you want something from Kashyyyk then.
Yeah.
Because
You want
they're a little
you
tall.
want the Wookiee quality.
Guys, is Kashyyyk good? Does that work? Should I do Kashyyyk?
Kashyyyk, the planet of
Kashyyyk works.
Okay.
Kashyyyk works.
Darren, do you know Endor? Do you know Endor?
So Josh, I have another question for you. Come on, people, get your questions in. So what's kind of interesting to me is like there was a particular photo of yours that I really enjoyed via your social media with you and the Rock'em Sock'em robots.
Oh, great.
That was like really cool stuff. But obviously, like Mandalorian's not your first foray into the film world and the TV world and stuff of that nature. And I wanted to ask, like, was there something that wasn't Mandalorian that you worked on that you'd just like to take a moment to talk about because you're either real proud of it for one reason or the other, or maybe to like demonstrate like a really cool aspect of miniature art that maybe the common audience may not know?
Sure. I mean, honestly, Mandalorian is probably the crux so far. They've all been cool projects.
You look young, so you'll have many more ahead.
I hope so. But I think one of the more recent projects that I worked on before quarantine was the stop motion film that's on Netflix right now called Alien Xmas. And I never really worked on a stop motion film before. There's a couple studios out here that exclusively do stop motion and build sets all the time. And I actually went to school with some of the people that work at these studios. But that
Nice.
It's kind of just been I don't know. I think I'm more interested in kind of, science fiction and not necessarily things geared towards kids shows and things like that. So I think I haven't focused on that world. I haven't really worked in any of those studios, but having worked on one of these films, it's like, this is so fun. This is so, not only are they creating a role in the show, but when you get to one of these places where they're doing the animation and have all the little sets set up, it's a really cool little world to be a part of. And working on Alien Xmas, that was pretty cool because I got to go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say real quick, but before I cut you off, do you have perhaps a visual aid you can share with our audience from Alien Xmas?
Well, I just happened to.
What?
So this, in the film, there's a species of aliens that come to Earth, and the first people they encounter are Santa Claus and the residents of the North Pole. But the alien species, the Kleps, they kind of look like your typical gray alien, and the architectural style is all kind of jagged and I don't know what I'd call it, but this is one of the when Z, the queen leader of the aliens, comes out and addresses all the alien folk on the ship. She's kind of presented by these two horns that make a noise, and I made this little bugle or whatever you want to call it, Ricola horn.
Ricola horn.
That's so cool.
And
Alien Ricola horn.
Yeah,
my mom watched this movie and they loved it. Yeah.
It does look like a creature, and by the way, my mom saw it and very much enjoyed it as well. So she's
thank you.
She's big on Netflix.
That's the real horn right there, Mrs. McKinney. And
it even got drill marks from where it was mounted on set.
wow.
That's
I don't know how I got this. Somebody gave it to me, and they're just like, I know you liked making this, so you get to keep it.
That's really cool. That's nice that somebody did that for you. Josh, I got a couple questions here.
Cool. Sure.
Let's see. First of all, Sammy is asking, first model that you made, and secondly, the question, the model that you're most proud of.
Ooh, good question.
Very good.
I think the first model I ever built was a little United States destroyer, a ship called the Buckley. I built it with my dad, probably when I was like 5 or 6 years old, not too old. But he helped me. I don't think I could have done it on my own at that time. And I honestly, I think I just watched him build it for the most part. but that was the one I remember. I remember building that boat, and then I remember years later cutting it up and using it for a diorama. Right around the time Independence Day came out, I built this like diorama with my friend of like a ruined army base, and it had a shoreline, and then that boat was kind of like washed up on the shore, all cut up and melted with a soldering iron. But that, yeah, just like a typical boat. I think that's something that kids don't. What do I know? I don't have kids, but I don't think kids are building models like they used to. And I could be wrong. I could be right. I think they're doing stuff like playing Minecraft and building things that way.
Mhm.
Legos, which were huge in my life. I built tons of things with Legos, but model kits I think are kind of falling out of fashion just because they're hard. They're not toxic. They're a little smelly,
Yeah.
And toys are so darn good nowadays. It's like, why even build a model? It's like for $15 you can get this great replica of a spaceship, pre-painted and everything.
So Josh, which model were you most proud of, sir?
In the modern career, honestly, I think I'm proudest of the work that we did on the Mandalorian. That's again just kind of this crux that because I think because the dream is to always work on something like a Star Wars project. I never even thought it would happen, so it doesn't get much better than that. Even though it's not a spaceship, it's still awesome.
Hey, Josh, did you ever? I know you said you worked with Legos a lot and stuff. You remember those toys that were called Zax? And they were like connectable, but they were almost malleable connectable. Like you could have triangles, and they had like little divots on the end that you connect with another triangle. And then they had some squares that you can connect with those, and then you could kind of fold them a little bit and make actual ships out of them.
You're ringing some bells here. This is post Connects, right? This is like
yeah, it's post Connects.
Yes, I do recall this.
Came in like a blue vinyl bag with a pull like a drawstring and stuff. I used to play the shit out of those things. I had all of my miniature Transformer cars, the little miniature ones that would transform and stuff. They would get inside these Zack created ships and then fly off and then go attack larger Decepticons. And that was a thing, man. And Legos were great, but you couldn't make the shapes back then that you can now, of course. No. But you couldn't make those shapes back then with Legos. So it was like kind of almost, since I couldn't afford a Millennium Falcon, it was like the closest thing I could get to just I made a ghetto Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
Looked more like a bird, but still, hey, I was happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like having organic shapes in your life made your imagination go wild.
Right. Yeah. So you might want to look into Zax. That might help on the set, for the Mandalorian. Next thing you know, they're working with Zax. So we have another question. Adam asks, Josh, do you have any projects coming up besides Mandalorian?
I am currently working on 2 projects out of the house. They are, one is an indie film. We're doing some stop motion animation. And then the other one, I'm kind of building some destructible buildings for somebody to stomp on right now out of plaster and baking soda and a couple other.
I volunteer.
And I don't really know the names of these projects, so.
Fair enough.
NDA, got to be respectful.
Are there always new innovations in modeling? I mean, obviously, like in any art form, but like where it's like, hey, this used to be something we would use for crushing a building, but now this works like a lot better for that kind of thing.
Zax.
Honestly, it's like, well, I mean, when you first asked that, my mind went to 3D printing. But there are innovations in things like silicone and all kinds of things happening all the time, and that's across the board. Things are way better, way less toxic than they used to be. But yeah, I think specifically something that's been really big lately is the affordability of 3D printing. There's just literally like 2 or 3 years ago, for something of a certain quality, it's like a $3,000 machine. I just got one. It's a different method of getting but it's like $300. It's not very much money, and it's like it really just comes down to like, square footage or square inchage of the platform at this point. I can't do very, very large pieces, but you can do them in sections and things like that. But that is kind of it's way less time to sculpt something now, or way less time to build something with really fine detail and less glue. So there's drawbacks and sorry, go ahead.
That's okay.
Donald, if I may, real quick.
Yeah.
So Josh, if you're getting all this stuff that's like reducing the amount of toxicity in the materials that you're using, clearly you're not going to be able to get high off the fumes so easily. So wouldn't that hinder the artistic creativity maybe a little bit?
I think well, my mom gave me the non-toxic testers a long time ago, so I haven't had too much fun.
Well, that's good. Somebody was spoiled.
I'm kidding.
There's always something on TV to watch while you're working to fire your imagination, right?
Oh,
it's true.
It's all right.
Quick question.
Some next generation.
Quick question for Josh from Rafael Juarez. Rafael asks, here's a question. Are you a collector? And if so, what do you collect?
I mean, so I moved from Michigan about 5.5 years ago. A majority of my collected things are still back at my parents' house. Otherwise, this place would probably look like a toy store. I heard John Knoll from ILM say this a couple years ago in an interview. I wonder how much if we finally like made up the difference for how much we spent on Star Wars stuff versus how much we've made by working on it. And I've come nowhere near that because it was just a couple months that we worked on the job. But I've got I don't want to say hundreds because that might not be enough, but I've got over 1,000 action figures from Star Wars in the package. I got thousands of comic books, hundreds of comic books. Let's be honest. I'm a huge collector, and I collect. I have screen used miniatures from a few movies. Just working for some of these studios, they'd be throwing stuff in the garbage, and I'd be like, no. So I've got like a barrel, a wooden barrel from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I've got parts from Terminator 3, Pitch Black, all kinds of little John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars. I have, I collect. Yeah,
that's super
it's sentimental to me. I feel like they're like the greatest toys now. I don't have nearly as much money as I would need to be like a real pro prop collector, so I'm probably gonna have to go the way that you do, Jared, and get somebody to make something or make it myself, just
Josh,
a replica.
I'm gonna look this up. I gotta ask a buddy of mine, but there's a shop in San Diego. I think if you haven't gone to it, you have to go to it, and we'll talk after the show here. I definitely am gonna have to get you the name of that shop, and you might not want to leave. They might have to kick you out. I don't know, because that's what happened with me when I went in. It's a fantastical place. It's like a Willy Wonka of 80s and 90s and 70s toys.
Old Navy's a great place. They always have great deals, and
it's not Old Navy.
Josh. When you mentioned comic books, that's kind of a relatively smooth transition. Didn't you create a comic book story?
Actually, I didn't create the story. The story was written by a stand-up comedian by the name of Danny LaBelle, and he's got a comic called Fair Enough that I illustrated the 3rd issue, but he's been doing this comic for obviously 3 issues now, and it's kind of in the vein. Do you guys remember that comic book American Splendor, and then the movie American Splendor with Harvey Pekar?
Yeah,
Harvey Pekar was one of Danny's heroes, and he was inspired by that film and the comic series, and he kind of wanted to do something along those lines of just not epic stories, necessarily maybe epic in his mind, but not superheroes fighting over the future of the galaxy. He wanted to do very, very plain stories where people live in real life, and I But then, of course, we heighten it by the way we draw it. So it's like the dropping of a bag of peanuts, can look like the collapse of a mountain. You know what I mean? It's like the metaphors can the medium dictates how the metaphors are drawn, but the stories aren't necessarily fantastical.
Real quick, before we go a little further, Amish has a question. He says, what was the first job you worked on dealing with miniatures?
I have to think about that for a second. I'm pretty sure it was Marwin, but I think I don't want to say those were miniatures necessarily. Those were kind of like more like doll on the fence. But I think as a pro, I think Marwin was my first miniatures job out here.
And what's Marwin?
Kind of,
for those that don't know.
Marwin is the film Welcome to Marwin, based on the documentary Marwin Call, and the film, the narrative version of the story, it's directed by Robert Zemeckis, and it came out at the end of 2018. It's a Universal Studios movie, and it's kind of just basically the story of a guy who he's an alcoholic, and he wears women's shoes and hangs out at the local bar, and some guys who don't really care for the way that he, presents himself to the world didn't like that very much, so they beat him to within an inch of his life. And part of his recovery and therapy for himself is to kind of he goes within, and he goes home and kind of takes care of himself by comforting himself by building a small village of the way I say this, it just sounds kind of wacky, but he builds a small World War II era village outside his trailer, and kind of has the whole world. He creates a whole world for himself to kind of stay busy. And
that's the one with Steve Carell, correct?
Yeah. And he kind of fights. He imagines himself in the form of this kind of like Steve McQueen, Hogan's Heroes kind of guy, to get both ends of the spectrum there. And it literally, the character's name is Hoagie. He's almost like a, tough guy, John Wayne type that saves the day, and he gets in trouble himself, but then the women bail him out. So he's got the support system. It just basically represents all the friends in his life that he wishes could have protected him in that moment when he got hurt.
Josh, I just got a text message from my coworker, and she just wanted to let you know that the work visually in Marwin was just fantastic, she thinks.
Oh, thank you. It was just a small part of a big team. Again, it was a lot of scanning. We built practical miniatures, but then the scanning, and I believe that was done by a company called Gentle Giant. They translated the models into 3D textures and stuff like that. And
nice.
It's just a big group effort,
Josh, real quick, another question from Amish. What was the first... Did I ask that? Oh, no, you answered that. I'm sorry. That was the first job that you worked on dealing with miniatures. Okay, so my mom says that her birthday is coming up. Hint, hint. I think that's referring to probably the bugle thing that you had earlier. Sammy says that she may have bought a Star Wars Lego Advent calendar and a Harry Potter one. And she says may, as in like that was a maybe. She obviously did buy that. Enrique has a question. He says, not sure if anyone asked, but what's your favorite genre of film to work on? And I think you kind of already answered this, and it may have slipped by, but go ahead with this one.
I'm gonna tread lightly now that the question's being asked point blank, because I think you can sneak genres within genres, So it's like plans within plans.
Yeah, it's like a Western within a sci-fi film.
Yeah. No, I like, I love noir. I love, basically I love genre, I love any genre. I love Westerns, I love anything. I think, but obviously, science fiction is the speculative fiction, the possible, this could be this way, it doesn't necessarily have to be science based. It doesn't necessarily, but in a way it always is, because science is just what everything is. I think honestly, the term science fiction is limiting. I think it's just fiction. It's just stories.
Right.
So I love it all.
Another question to follow up that's a bit off the mark here. Is the Baby Yoda model anatomically correct?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Hey, there you go. There you go. Questions
Based on
answered.
the original Kenner action figure.
He prefers Grogu now.
And also, Josh, have you gotten to build a lightsaber? It's another question.
Oh, that's a good question.
I built one when I was a little kid out of like a copper pipe, like a water pipe, and like some kind of like a piece of a microphone, I think, from an old camcorder. But no, I've never built a proper lightsaber.
Raphael says We Can Be Heroes has some of the original Star Wars action figures still on card. Come on in and ask for Julio.
Awesome.
There we go. Great plug in. Great plug in.
Another plug by Raphael. So hats off to you two guys. You guys. My mom says that the movie that you worked on was that she thought it was a very good one. So she thought it was fantastic. She really enjoyed it. My mom's just a fan. I'm just gonna say that, Josh. My mom's a fan. You should probably sign something and send it to her because she's a pretty big fan, apparently. But yeah, as far as like as your work overall in what you've done within Star Wars. Now, let's say hypothetically, if they said, Josh, we want you to do some model ships for Star Trek. What would the Enterprise be the first thing you would think about doing, or would you think about maybe a Klingon ship or a Romulan ship, or like what would you?
A Klingon bird of prey.
There's some really cool original stylistic ships in Star Trek. I think Star Trek's more known for that than any other sci-fi world, really. What would be the one that would be the most appetizing to you? Would it be a Borg, like a cube thing? What would it be?
Well, a Federation ship is usually so polished, and it's like that's a lot of work. That's like it's like a car. There's so much body shop work involved, and Klingons are cool. The Bird of Prey is an awesome ship. They're all cool. They're all distinct. But I honestly, I think I would say, Federation ship, not necessarily the Enterprise, but that because that would be like a challenge, that would like make my skills better, trying to make it perfect, and something like that. Something.
And Josh, Federation. Now that you've said that, my mother's birthday is coming up, and she loves Star Trek. Wow, what a coincidence!
What a smart lady.
If I may add to that, if you had the choice, what kind of Marvel or DC movie would you like to work on if you were given a choice to do model work on?
Well, I think the obvious answer is an Ant-Man movie because tiny thing. Yeah. But I would honestly love to work on something more in like the cosmic realm of Marvel, something like Jack Kirby inspired. I really liked what they were doing in Thor Ragnarok with the kind of the junk planet and the cubes. And did you guys see the study model of the collector's like main compound? They did a study model just for the production, and it was this crazy, it looks like that Guardians of the Galaxy tower. It's all these little jagged little pieces. It was awesome. I'd like to work on something more, influenced by later Jack Kirby cosmic kind of stuff in Marvel. But hey, Kirby went over to DC, so I don't care. I'll just follow wherever the man went.
Right.
So New Gods or Eternals, either or.
Exactly. Yeah. You guys ever look at that old 2001: A Space Odyssey comic book that Kirby illustrated? Man, and like it's all tied to that stuff. If you really look into it, it's like that is some trippy comic book stuff.
First appearance of Machine Man was in one of those.
Thank you.
Yeah, there were real toxic fumes when they printed that.
Dude.
Yeah, the whole run, I believe, I've seen that sell for a very reasonable price. So you could still grab that whole 2001 Space Odyssey for cheap, in other words. speculatively
While we're
speaking.
on it, I'm going to put this out there. Marvel, can you please make a ROM Space Knight movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe they're going to.
I don't know if Marvel can. I don't think they have the rights anymore. I think that went to...
Mattel's like, nah.
Yeah.
You want a chunk.
Hey, Raphael, do
They'll
you
make it
have
happen.
that 2001: A Space Odyssey comic book run that We Can Be Heroes? Just asking.
I'm sure they have the Machine Man issue. I'm positive they have that.
Yeah, they've got something. Josh just popped in, Kevin. Josh.
What's up, Josh?
So, hey, Josh, thanks for popping in.
Yeah, thanks.
My mom apparently is not a fan of modeling the Borg ship, so that's out. So don't make that for her birthday, not the Borg
It
one.
was so easy.
Raphael, Darren, to answer your question, he says we do. So,
Of course you do. See, this is the best advertising you can get right here, Raphael.
So, and Josh, I'm going to get back to this real quick about this comic, because Darren mentioned it briefly, and then we got more questions about other things, so we had to get a little off topic on that. This one was called The Black Scarab. Now, Josh, I don't know if you know this, but I created a web series called The Blue Beetle Ted Cord Returns. Now, in this series, the superhero Ted Cord is the Blue Beetle. Now, you worked with a guy that created and co-created a character called the Black Scarab. Blue Beetle, Black Scarab. Do you know if there was any influence from the Blue Beetle to create?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
First of all, I can't believe you found that. And I should be burying things a little better.
We have a research team.
Yeah. Well, that was something I did kind of at the end of high school and the first couple of years of college. Yeah, absolutely. I was obsessed with the idea of an Egyptian curse a la Moon Knight and Blue Beetle. I love the idea of mixing Egyptian knight and superheroes together. I don't know. It was just, and you know, it was that time when I think maybe Sky Captain was kind of just coming out. So I was really into noir revival, and there was this little, I don't know if this is going to be too off topic or too detailed for you guys, but there was this compilation of all these different Batman comics that came out 2004, 2005, and it was all these different styles of Batman. It wasn't that steampunk thing. It wasn't all that stuff. It was really small stories, and one of them, in this graphic novel, just those pages of this one story were like yellowed. They looked like they were this old, pulp comic, and it was this really weird version of Batman that was like not even like the beginning of the comic. It was almost funky. It didn't look really good, but it was printed on this weird paper, and I was like, oh my god, I want to draw a comic that looks like it's from the 30s or something. So that kind of did that whole thing. I loved cartoon shows and comic books like The Tick. I thought The Tick was very awesome. The animated show especially.
Right.
And I just kind of, that's the kind of superhero stuff I really love.
Have you met Ben Edlund at all, the creator of The Tick?
No, he was signing stuff at Earth 2 on Ventura here in the Valley maybe 2 years ago, but I did not go.
Okay, so you know the dude from The Big Lebowski, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, Ben Edlund is the dude, like in kind of in his personality a little bit, but more cerebral. So imagine a more cerebral dude, and you have Ben Edlund.
I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastical, to be honest, to meet the man. I met him on a couple occasions, particularly because I got into a show called Supernatural, which was originally on the what was it? Not the CW. It was the
WB.
Thank you, the WB, and it was the only show to still be from the WB on the CW. And I got into it because the DVDs were super cheap at Target one year at a sale for Christmas, and I bought 2 seasons of it. And I fell in love with the show. And I had no idea that Ben Edlund jumped on in season 2 to be a writer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, wow. He became a writer and eventually a producer on it. So when I met him, I took the season 2 DVD set for him to sign. at his booth for the Tick, like a Tick comic signing thing, and sign my season 2 CW Supernatural DVD set, please. And he was so like dude about it, like, hey man, that's cool, like that's all right, man. That's like your opinion on this is valid, and and he signed it and shit. And it was such a cool moment. So like,
and then he peed on his rug.
Right, and then I peed on his rug for sure. But like, the Tick meant a lot to me when I was a kid, particularly because I was a weird kid and he was so weird. And watching the cartoon meant a lot to me, and like growing up with those characters. So for me, it was always really cool when you could meet somebody that's kind of your hero and they're actually a nice person. So, it's good that like you're diving into this comic book world a little more now, because you said that the other project that you're working on was this past November, correct?
Yeah.
And what was the name of that project?
That's a comic book called Fair Enough.
Okay. And do you want to talk a little bit more about that, or whatever?
Actually,
Sure.
Donald, before he does that, I wanted to mention one thing to you. So, Josh, you might wonder why Donald was able to identify the Blue Beetle reference, because after all, Donald is the star of
The Blue Beetle Ted Cord Returns, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I wrote, directed, produced, and acted in, starred in the series on YouTube. It's a YouTube original, so to speak.
Oh, well, I got to see this.
Yeah.
See, more views.
Yeah, there we go. I'm always looking for that.
Isn't Night Owl based on the Blue Beetle?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, all those characters, because Alan Moore originally meant to base the characters off the Charlton characters, and DC changed their minds when they purchased Charlton. They were like, nah, we were going to let you, but we don't want to now. We've got plans. And so then he was like, okay, I'll just rename them, and he did. So, Grant Morrison recently, in the last probably 5 years, he did a comic book, a multiversity comic book, where he rewrote kind of the Watchmen in like one issue, and he put those characters back in. It's the coolest thing.
Replacing them?
Yeah, it's the coolest thing to see Ted Cord as the Blue Beetle in the bug flying around when you know it's supposed to be Night Owl, which is supposed to be the Blue Beetle. It's like surreal. It's like so odd. But I highly recommend that series. Yeah, it's really cool. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead and go real quick on this. We can plug that real quick if you don't mind.
So the website is fairenoughcomic.com, and there you can see it's only been out for about 3 issues. It's an indie comic. It's really my first foray in the comics. I did kind of like it was almost like a comic book textbook hybrid back when I was in school about 6 or 7 years ago, and that's about as close as I got to anything being published, and it's just on Amazon. But this is an actual printed comic book, and growing up making your own little stupid comic books that you sell to your friends for $1. This is it looks like a real one, so it's just a pleasure. It's a pleasure to see it be a reality. I don't know.
That's excellent. So everybody watching, please feel free to check that out on the website. I'm sure he would appreciate it, and we would appreciate it as well. But Josh, is there anything more before we wrap this up? Because we're going to have to close here in a couple minutes. Anything more that you want to state? And also anybody in the chat, any last minute question that you want to ask, please feel free to do so. We only have a few minutes left. But Josh, go ahead if there's anything you want to state as far as like just the industry itself, your love for modeling, what somebody that wants to get into this type of thing, what they would have to do, anything like that you want to throw out there.
Well, that's kind of like, I think giving advice to somebody that wants to do this kind of encompasses how this happened for me. Sheer love of the genre, sheer love of the art. It's for a long time you feel like you're just obsessed with something that's really never going to give a return. Like you'll never be able to really make anything that It just seems like such a high mountain to climb. And I'm not saying like I've reached the peak or anything, but it's like I feel like I just became so obsessed with something that it almost manifested into reality, and that's what you really have to do. You have to, if you casually love something, you casually love it. It's not the thing that drives you. And I'm not saying model making is what wakes me up in the morning, but it's like part of the formula. And you just have to really want to do this stuff, because there can be periods of drought when you don't get the kind of, ideal project that you're. Honestly, a lot of the projects have been things that feel like they're a stepping stone to something else, But I feel like everything has given me some kind of lesson. I've learned to make something a better way by doing it, taking on this one task, and just keeping at it. Always challenging yourself to do better work. Always being self-critical. That I think that can be a double-edged sword. You can be a little harsh on yourself, but I think being critical makes better work, because you're going to get critique from your peers or your teachers, whoever's going to give it to you. There's going to be somebody, you guys all know, how about we try it this way? There's always going to be somebody giving notes.
Right.
So I think just trying your best is super important. I see this as it's not like, a lot of people, they go to their day job and that's not really how I'm sure most people have accepted these things as part of their identity, but doing what I do is part of me. So it's and I say that in a, I'm trying to be rational about it, but it's I take this stuff really seriously, and it's it's important. So it's it's part of you. I feel like that's so rambly.
No. I appreciate that. It shows your passion, and shows that that somebody that wants to do something, and not necessarily modeling in general, but something that feels a little niche, should just keep practicing and keep working towards it if that's their passion, if that's something that they want to legitimately work on and do. It's important to note that, and whether you'll admit it or not, you're an inspiration for people that are looking at that right now and that are thinking about that. So
that's right.
We appreciate that, and we appreciate you for being on this show, and thank you very much for coming on to the Real Short Box. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I'm sure everybody in the chat section here will agree, specifically my mother, whose birthday is coming up, I just want to say. But no, seriously, thank you for tuning in. We very much appreciate it. Those of you that don't know, we do usually do a live podcast like this on YouTube Live every week, every Monday. We also have an audio podcast that's produced and comes out pretty much every week. And it is on all the basic platforms that you have. You'll have Apple Podcasts, you'll have Spotify, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. Yeah, all
Sure.
Yep, all the big ones. Tune in, you name it, we're on it. And if you can't find it, reach out to us and we'll put it on there. Again, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter. We love our audience, and we love reaching out to people. We love posting really fun things and stuff. And, maybe if we don't see you out and about anytime soon, perhaps we'll see you someday
at the sweet, precious, luscious, kindly, safe comic book shop.
Boy.
Good night, everybody. Again, Josh, thank you for tuning in and being on the show. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Josh.
And
Thanks, guys.
good night to our audience. Have a good night. And live long and prosper.
There
we go.
May the force be with you.